Welcome to the WoodsTalk podcast extra branch. Hello.
That working?
Yes, we are indeed. How are you, man?
I'm good, man. I'm good. My face is a little overexposed. Hold on.
That's the story of my life, unfortunately.
Yeah, you know, if only it were mine. That's a bit better. Yeah, man, I'm good. How are you?
I'm very, very good. Thank you very much for coming on and doing this podcast on Zoom, which is obviously everybody's favorite thing in the world at the minute, even though it's a piece of shit.
Yeah, I kind of feel like I'm the only person in the whole world that's barely used it. I did somebody's birthday party right at the beginning, and then because I'm self-employed, no one invites me to anything. It's just not an issue, really.
I'm getting sick of just doing these quizzes with family, and you've got a high percentage of your aunties and uncles trying to figure out what the fuck is going on. So they're like looking straight into the camera going, "Oh, I can see him." And you're like, yes, it's Avatar come to life. That's what it is.
It's times like these that I just love my dad for alienating our whole family. Just gives me so much peace and quiet.
Yeah. He's been being very generous when you think about it, and just be like, I'm just not going to bother with anybody.
Oh,
The last time I spoke to my dad, he was saying, because God forbid anybody's dad who's over 50 isn't a morbid bastard. He was talking about how, because he had a stroke last year and he's getting better now, he's actually bought a second phone just in case his first phone breaks and he's had another stroke. So he's like, at least then I've got a secondary phone and I can it's a smartphone now as well. The first one wasn't a smartphone. This is a new smartphone, so he can Snapchat us or send us a WhatsApp video of him drooping out of the mouth and saying, "Yeah, I've had another stroke, by the way, so send help."
Oh God, jeez. Yeah. My dad's got dementia, but he knows he's got dementia. It's not that bad yet, and his phone battery ran out, so he just threw it into the neighbour's garden, and that was that.
Yeah,
and then he's like, "Why'd you do that, Dad?" It's just because it annoyed me. I couldn't charge it, so just plug it into the wall. He's like, "Well, I couldn't remember how, so I just threw it into the neighbour's garden, and that was my solution."
I absolutely love it. Like, even my wife's dad is sort of a bit of a technophobe, and he was saying that because my wife's brother is living in Liverpool, he wanted a smartphone so we could WhatsApp video call. And he was speaking to us about the new phone that he had bought, and he was saying, "Oh," and he's an old sort of Irish farmer. So he's all very, "Oh, it's this, it's very good." And he speaks very sort of cassette playing, slightly too slow sort of voice. He's like, "It's very good." And he's like, "It's got a camera, and the camera is brilliant. The camera is outstanding." And I was asking him about it, and I was like, "What sort of phone is it? Would it be an iPhone, Samsung? What sort of shape is it?" And he was like, "I tell you what, sure, I'll take a photo of it and send it to you," which makes no fucking sense whatsoever.
Oh, bless him.
Yeah. No, I almost wanted to say, "Yes, no worries, do that," just to see him try and figure it out.
Yeah. How long will this take?
Yeah.
Yeah, go for it. I'll wait.
He also very famously won't get an email account, because as soon as he heard the word account, he was like, "I'm not fucking paying for that." I'm like, "No, it's free." Yeah.
Oh my God. My dad saw something on daytime television about how the Chinese steal your data. So like he wanted to get rid of his computer, and he took the hard drive out of it, like, big fucking like SATA hard drive, and tried to barbecue it. And I was like, "Dad, okay, firstly, two problems here, Dad. Firstly, you're putting fire to electronics, and that's not good, and you should know that. And secondly, whilst there is an issue of data theft, in your case specifically the Chinese, because old people are racist, nobody wants what's on your hard drive. You don't want what's on your hard drive." I don't think like the Chinese government are after what's on my dad's hard drive.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just caught him trying to barbecue a massive hard drive one afternoon. Like,
so when you say trying to barbecue, how do you try and barbecue it? So it didn't take, or
no,
a disposable barbecue?
Yeah, it's an odd phrase. Yeah, I intervened in the nick of time. Let's say, he just stood there like it was a fucking fillet steak.
Yeah,
it's like, is that is that a hard? What? Yeah, he didn't get very far. I was like, dude, Dad, like just like smash it with a hammer. Like they're notorious. You drop the things they fuck up. Put a magnet to it. You can't cook it.
Yeah.
What do you think's going to happen? Then he's going to bury it or something next to the cat. I don't know.
So, as I say, thank you very much for coming on as well, Bo. Very nice of you. I've talked about Valverde a few times on this podcast, but for the people that might not know about it,
cool. Thank you so much. No, I did not know about it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're more than welcome. So, to anybody that might not know what Valverde is, how does it work, and how did it get started, and all that jazz? We'll get into the formal stuff before we talk about tits.
Yay, tits! So yeah, it's a YouTube channel. Thank you for having me. Actually, well, I should have said that.
More than welcome.
Reciprocate immediately because I'm just some schlub from the internet. It's a YouTube channel started by myself and my friend Duncan Casey. We used to work with somebody else on YouTube as a trio, and we no longer work with that person, and we started our own thing. And it's kind of, we review films, old films and new films, and we do feature-length commentaries to films and kind of little bits of comedy based around movies. And now we start doing live streams and stuff in the light of, pandemic stuff. Yeah. So Duncan is an actor in the industry. He's done video games and movies and things like that. I'm kind of like a corporate filmmaker most of the time, but I've also done a bit of cinematography, and I've done random prop work, and I've done a few kind of industry jobs. So I'm kind of like low-level industry bottom feeder. And I leverage that to talk about movies on YouTube, basically.
Because I remember hearing, I'm going to act as if like I don't know anything about you, but prior to sort of hoping and listening to the channel for a while now, I do have some semblance. So you did study film at university, is that correct?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So did I. So that's why we probably both worked in retail at some point, because it's. Like,
I don't know what you mean. Why would you say? Yeah, absolutely.
Like, bear in mind, when I studied it, it was still quite a new degree. So it was very much sort of bottom of the barrel stuff in terms of, equipment availability and stuff like that. But, this is like, obviously I'm 30 now, so I've been graduated quite a long time, but this is pre-Game of Thrones. So even if you did appreciate the degree, where would you couldn't have really stayed in Ireland. You would have had to have left. But when I look back, I just go, I learned more in terms of any sort of filmmaking or being involved in it by just doing it, more so than sitting and watching, yet another fucking clip from Blue Velvet or some shit. That's the first film I could think of was Blue Velvet.
I'm 36, so if you take the primitive stuff you worked with and take it back another 6 years, that's kind of what we talk about. I taught myself to edit digitally, but then in terms of formal training, we did it on linear edit tape to tape SVHS machines.
Okay.
And we also used a 60mm editing station. It's called a Steenbeck machine, which is like a mechanical editing machine with the sellotape and the razor blades and stuff, which was really, really interesting.
Yeah,
but it's 60mm film. Yeah, 60mm film did make me want to take my own life. It was basically my Hearts of Darkness. But it was just like, all this romance about film. And it's like, yeah, because Christopher Nolan and Quentin Tarantino have people running around after them that do all the shit work that film involves. Like, if you actually try and make film as a low budget production, it's absolutely like eating glass.
Yeah,
like it's just horrible. And I was always romantic about film. When they sold my degree to me, kind of like, we get to use film, and then the term we use film, I was like, this is the worst thing that's ever happened to me.
Yeah, I kind of feel very similar in that I was always, the practical aspect luckily wasn't really the biggest thing for me, because I was always in terms of writing and stuff like that. But I think, if anything, looking back now, the thing that maybe annoyed me the most was just film snobs, which obviously you probably get a lot of now through the channel. But, just the ones that have, there's obviously different types. There's obviously the snob that's just very vanilla, like middle of the road, like favorite film, Citizen Kane, and lives his life by Rotten Tomatoes. And you're like, you're a Watts-eating prick. That's what you are. It's just, they like anime a bit too much.
Yes. Well, this comes in different flavors, and it's something that Toby Venables appears on our channel, as you may know, and he was my teacher I went to 2 unis because I transferred out of one to another. He was my teacher at uni, and he was always, there are a few cool ones at my uni, but Toby was cool, and like Toby wanted to talk about cool stuff.
Yeah.
So when we started this up, I just emailed him one day. I said, Toby, do you want to come on? And the reason I'm saying that is just to couch how pretentious I'm about to be. So yeah, we'll get there. I'm really into I did the practical side of film at school, and I thought it was rubbish. I thought practical film, I'm not saying you shouldn't do it, but the schools I went to, the practical side of the degree was not very good.
Yeah.
And I felt like I'd already learned, because I taught myself to edit and shoot before I got to school. I was bad at it, but that's not the point. So I got really into the critical theory, and I do really like critical theory a lot. I mean, I like critical theory a lot, and I like analysis of films a lot. And unfortunately, there's a big amount of pretension in that. And I do make lots of bum and poo and wee jokes on our channel, but I do try to put real analysis in there as well. But I try to make it I try to be as open with it and make it as accessible as possible without leaning into it, because you can get really into loads of really pretentious film theory, and you can start referencing these kind of different academics and stuff. And I think that is important. But when someone wants to hit, like you just couching it in all this kind of academic stuff that nobody's read, that is not an accessible way to present your discipline.
Yeah, that's true. Because I was like, I don't prepare for these, but one thing I did sort of, right, well, I wrote down a few things that I intend to chat about with you, but I was curious in terms of the channel, with what you were saying there, is it difficult to find the balance of putting things on your channel that you actually give a fuck about in terms of talking about and analysing, but you still want to get views on the videos, you know what I mean? So I know it would be easy to be one of those dickheads on YouTube that has the clickbait titles where it's like, Johnny Depp to play Joker in the next Batman film. No, those guys. And see, if I hear the term, take this with a pinch of salt one more time, I'm going to stick my dick in a shredder. Honestly, it's just all these guys that just make up shit. But they're like, apparently Pattinson's playing Batman and the Joker. Oh, okay, cool.
Oh, good, excellent. That makes total sense. I'm really interested. All that kind of, I mean, because that's the fucking, like the worst. I remember the worst film gossip ever. Like back in the days, because I think we've both had internet for most of our lives. I mean, I do remember that pre-internet phase, but I was quite early adopting myself, but whatever. Like the worst film journalism was always in like The Sun. I mean, The Sun is a fucking scum rag anyway, but in the middle of The Sun, it'd always be like, oh, in the new Batman film, Cher's going to play Catwoman. It's like, Cher's 90. She's not going to play Catwoman. And then they kept saying Eddie Murphy would be the Riddler for some reason. It's like, who made this? This is utter shit. Yeah. That lives on in those YouTube channels. And we don't tend to do news. I'm not trying to say, oh, we're so great, because we don't really do news stuff particularly. We respond to some things. But that kind of like you say, there's so many videos and it's kind of like, take it with a pinch of salt. It's like, well, fuck off and leave me alone then. It's like, your photoshopped picture of fucking Jimmy Cranky as Calendar Man means nothing to me.
Yeah, I think it's there's so many of them now that, as I say, I'm curious for your channel, because obviously you want to get people involved, and I know it would be easy to just do the big hitters. So you mentioned Star Wars or Terminator or Predator and stuff in the title. It's going to get views, but do you find it's hard to balance with maybe the more indie stuff that you want to talk about, or stuff that's maybe lesser appreciated? Or is that the point that you're going, nobody talks about these, we're going to do a video on it?
It's tricky, and it's something worth us talking about when we're asked, because we are accused a lot of like, oh, you just talk about Terminator, you just talk about Predator, you just talk about Alien. And I freely admit it's a well to which we go back, because those videos do get views, and we are not a big channel. I mean, we were about to hit 4,000 subscribers, which we used to be on a channel that had 100,000 subscribers, and we split off and started our own thing.
Yeah.
And people often say to us, like, that's all you talk about. And it isn't true. Like, it is true to a degree, and absolutely we will go back and do those topics, like, because they will do well, but I don't think to an egregious extent. And what I find annoying is, so I just released a video today, which only came out a couple of hours ago, about a film called The Quiet Earth by Jeff Murphy.
I've seen that,
Yeah. So that's a kind of little passion thing for me, because I love The Quiet Earth. I don't think many people have seen it, and from the response, it doesn't appear that they particularly have. I did with my friend Duncan, a different Duncan, like Earth 2 Duncan, Duncan Raw, who's an old mate. We did a series on Italian horror. We did Tetsuo Iron Man. We did some nuclear panic stuff. So we did Threads and When the Wind Blows. And for our numbers, they did really badly.
Okay.
And whenever we do a Terminator video, people come in the comments and say, you only ever talk about Terminator. But when we do like the Tetsuo Iron Man one, those people aren't there saying, well done for doing this. They're only there to say, And when I think I call it a problem, but I don't think it's a problem creatively. Something that Duncan and I do is that he calls it one for me, one for you, which is like a industry thing where it's like when an actor, does a passion project and then they go and do a franchise sequel or whatever.
Like the Chuckle Brothers.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they have immense artistic integrity. No.
Yeah.
Well, they do though. There's a discussion to be had.
Well, one of them does.
Sorry. Yeah.
Bit of trivia.
No.
Would you like to hear a bit of trivia about that? The one who's alive.
Paul.
Yeah, he does a lot of cocaine. Bit of trivia. I was again.
Surely, allegedly, you have to say allegedly. I would never.
That's why I'm happy that I'm not a popular podcast. I can say whatever the fuck I want. But we shared the same dressing room the last solo stand-up show I did. I was the early show, and they were like, "You need to leave now and vacate the green room because Paul Chuckle is coming in now, and he needs his coke." And geez, it was like just coal bags,
just like that, straight up like that. Paul Chuckle needs his coke. Get out.
Yeah, he was doing a DJ set in the
big room. Of
course he
was.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, progressive techno, yeah, I would have thought.
German trance or some shit.
Yeah, he normally does a residency at Berghain, but he just popped over for the weekend.
Yeah.
Wow. That's particularly for a guy who's getting on, because that's how you just collapse and have a heart attack, man, just by doing loads of blow. Like,
maybe he's scared if he stops, he'll die.
Yeah, he's one of them. He's like a shark. If he stops swimming, if I stop doing coke, as long as he says to you when he does a line, I don't care.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
Well, trivia right back. You remember the man who used to come into every Chuckle Brother episode and say like, "No slacking," who played their boss?
Kind of remember it, yes.
He's the third Chuckle Brother. He is a Chuckle.
Oh, really? He must have serious issues.
Well, he's got like a hot 20-year-old wife or something.
Really?
So. Yeah, people are just like, it's gone so far off the rails already.
I know, yeah.
Anyway, what I was saying was basically we will never drop the obscure stuff because it's all part of the fun.
Yeah.
Like we always do the kind of big hits to get numbers, but like we do the obscure stuff because it's part of the fun and it's good for people who haven't seen it. Or if they have seen it, just to hear a new perspective on it and stuff like that. So we always do it and I'm never going to stop. It does annoy me a bit when people kind of say, that's all you do. And it's like, well, not really, because I've done... like every other thing at least is something a bit more obscure, but you didn't watch it, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But then to say that you just do Terminator, what I've done before, because I'm an immensely petty human being, is like I sometimes quite like to sort of crunch numbers down a bit, and I've been that close a lot to sort of doing like a pie chart. And it's like we've done 294 videos, the runtime, blah, 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 blah. And if you look at our runtime, it's 10,057 minutes, and of those minutes, only 304 minutes are Terminator films, which represents 1.4. But you know what I mean? Like,
just to be proper.
Because I am.
Just to have the evidence. Physical.
Yeah.
I have a PowerPoint. You dick.
Do you ever feel like you're turning into Alan Partridge? Because I do quite a lot, and I sort of like I can imagine myself one dark night just like getting onto fucking Excel, making the graph of being like only 3.4%. That's the other thing we do too much is Alan Partridge impressions.
But I think it must be tough, trying to appease hardcore film fans, particularly more so on the comic book side of things. They're never pleased. So I can't imagine, because like I would take the most vicious heckler in the world than debating with someone on YouTube over the validity of a scene in The Dark Knight. Do you know what I mean? I would take heckling over that far quicker because they're just never happy. And it's mostly comic book nerds from what I can gauge, and they just never seem to be able to just like wait and see. They always seem to complain about stuff that hasn't even come out, where they're like, Michael Keaton, he's going to be a shit Batman. Heath Ledger's going to be a terrible Joker. Chris Evans was the fucking Human Torch and he was terrible. And look, you know what I mean? And you're just going, just fucking wait and see. Really.
Well, it's like Robin Pattinson Batman. There's a guy that I'd tweet with, and he's kind of like, "Oh, he's just a kid. He's just a kid." And I was like, "He's 34. Like, he's not." And then he's just a kid. I was like, "He is older than when fucking Christian Bale did it."
Yeah.
Like Christian Bale was like 31. Like, I do have a bunch of comics behind me, but we try to avoid the kind of comic book guy stuff. I mean, we do definitely cover that. and it's something comics have been a big passion of mine for a long time. But I like to cover like 2000 AD and stuff because that's, again, it's the kind of one for me, one for you thing.
Yeah.
But when we do comic book stuff, so like we did Iron Man ages ago, and to me, Iron Man in 2020 is a very interesting film because it's the genesis of a bigger thing, and I think it affected production models. I think it affected Hollywood's economics. I think it kind of disrupted the market, like that. And to me, that's what's interesting.
Yeah.
What I don't really want to talk about is to say, well, like Iron Man's left bollock as of issue 742 was retconned into a diamond, but they didn't show that, like all that stuff. I tell you what, you probably sit, when you go to YouTube comment, you got a YouTube comment on the video, and when there's a kind of a limit, it will just show the whole comment. But if they go over that limit, it says read more, and you click on read more. Every time I click on read more, sometimes it just goes, you click on read more and it's like, and that's all I have to say. And other times you click on read more and it just goes, woof! And I've seen like these insane tomes like typed out into YouTube, and sometimes without paragraph breaks. I've seen like really weird ones, but just long ass things where someone's essayed like the whole history of like the Abomination or Namor the Submariner.
Yeah.
And I reached a point in YouTube where I just kind of went, when I click on that and it goes, whoosh, I just go, no, I'm not reading that.
Yeah.
Sorry, life's too short.
It's why have a dissertation? You know what I mean? In a YouTube comment, it's just fucking stupid.
Who's going to read it? And I just sort of think we go out of our way to not, because if you sort of talk about, we have talked about Batman versus Superman. I think that wasn't me. That was Stephen and Duncan. Like like they talked about Dark Knight. No, not sorry, Dark Knight. I'm talking about Batman versus Superman and whatever. And again, the point is like, how was this film made? When was it made? Why was it made? What are its source materials and stuff like that? It's not, this film is good because the suit looks like the suit from this comic, or this film is bad because they forgot to do Superman's hair in a certain way. That is profoundly uninteresting to us.
Yeah.
But you get the read more like every time you cover.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anything like that.
And I think it's too difficult. These comic nerds obviously say that, stuff in films or TV shows strays too far from the comic books. And I'm like, to say there's a wealth of material to draw from in these films in terms of comic books, how can you really please everything? Like, I don't give a fuck if Thor was celiac at one point. I don't give a shit. You know what I mean? Just
I'd read it. Thor sweating over loaves of bread in a supermarket.
Yeah. I don't give a shit if Hawkeye had tennis elbow at one point. I don't give a shit. It's here. You know what I actually did definitely want to ask you, and when you've said this quite a few times on the channel, and it stuck with me. And as soon as I'm going to get very,
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry that anything I've said is in your head. That's awful.
I scream it at night now. I scream it in church when I'm getting an exorcism. But when you said it, I was kind of going, I think it's a really cool thing to say, but I was a wee bit sort of annoyed that I couldn't say the same about me, and I'll explain it. You say that Shaun of the Dead, you feel is a film 100% made for you in every respect. And when you said that, I was like, that's really interesting. And I don't, to this day, don't feel I have the same. There's a lot of films that come close, Big Trouble in Little China, and like the Michael Keaton Batman, I'm a massive fan of, and like, there's loads of stuff, but I can't say definitively that I'm a film 100% for me. But you still maintain that Shaun of the Dead 100% you feel is made for you.
Yeah, because that's such a disparate intersection of things, right? Mm-hmm. And I would say, if it comforts you in any way, I think you just haven't seen it yet. It sounds like soppy Disney shit, but like it's probably just you haven't seen it yet. Because like Shaun of the Dead,
Chihuahua, probably.
Well, maybe Beverly Hills Chihuahua too. Who's to say? If I would love if it was like Deep Blue Sea 3 or something. That'd be fucking. I fucking found it, mate. Like
one of the Jeepers Creepers sequels. Like, fuck's sake.
Fucking hell. I know someone who was in the frame to direct one of those. Anyway, but I can't talk about that. I'm not just. Well, that's the anti-name dropping, isn't it? Shaun of the Dead represents a very specific group of elements because I was obsessed with the George Romero films and the zombie genre growing up. And as I said before, like on the channel and stuff, like there was a time where that was so off trend, you just couldn't even find them. It's not just that, like all of that's in there, but the other thing, like Edgar Wright's really musical, and it also had all of my music in it. So I've always been a huge fan. I've always been a huge fan of kind of really like old school hip hop, like 70s New York hip hop.
Yeah.
And kind of more kind of modern British takes on that. So like they have in that movie, they have Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five, and they have Melly Mel, and they have Man Parish, and then there's posters for like Ninja Tune, which is like a British kind of hip hop breaks label and stuff. Like all that cool shit. Like it's cool. There's kind of cool stuff in it, and particularly when I suppose I was 20, 21 when that came out, it was kind of like I was already into all of that. I was already into Spaced, and I was already into all of the zombie stuff. And all of the zombie stuff was like super nerdy, and like a few of my mates would get on board with it. But like, you know, it was kind of a thing. Whereas the music thing, that was kind of a cool thing to be into. And you could like, drag someone to see DJ Cuba in fucking, you know, Digbeth or whatever. Nothing smush those things together. So suddenly I felt I was in the middle of that Venn diagram of what that film was doing, because it's all the zombie stuff, which I loved. It's got this amazing kind of visual style. So I was already kind of like wanting to be a filmmaker. And then it had all the music I liked in it.
Yeah.
And I honestly felt like it had been extracted from my brain. And I've never felt since that kind of, because I love Hot Fuzz. Hot Fuzz is amazing. But I'm like, somewhere out there is the the person who's a huge fan of The Wicker Man and Bad Boys. And that's where it meets in the middle.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But for me,
interesting. I thought it was a really cool sentiment, because obviously now I have a weird relationship with that film, and that the first time I seen it, I didn't like it. But not that I didn't like it, but it was kind of lost on me, the sort of subtlety of it. When I went back a few years later, I was like, I get it now. Like my favorite scene, not that there's a bad scene, but for some reason, maybe it's a testament to how good the film is, that the more you watch it, the more you see stuff that you didn't see before, maybe.
They're all layered. All those Edgar Wright movies are just layers and layers.
Absolutely.
And layers.
So the thing that I couldn't stop laughing at is just the bit where they're throwing the vinyls at the two zombies and they're trying to pick which ones. And it's I don't know why, I just absolutely love that scene. I think it's brilliant.
Because it's got that music snobbery in it.
Yeah.
Because like when Peter Serafinovich comes down and goes, you know, that's stupid hip hop isn't working. He goes, it's not hip hop, it's electro, prick. Because they've got Man Parish on there. It's not hip hop, it's electro, prick. Yeah. And then they do and this is because all that kind of stuff as well. That music was a bit kind of off trend at the time, but if you're into sort of that, like, it's at the root of dance music as well. But like, if you're into that, you're into it. So me and my mates used to sing white lines to each other. You know, we used to do Rapper's Delight to each other. We used to have fucking Man Parish on at like hip hop bebop on at 4 a.m. And they were doing all the stuff we were doing, you know, like, and we weren't as cool as them. But then it was fused with the zombie stuff. And the other thing as well was, like, in theory, because I felt like I'd been struck by lightning when I saw that film, like I really did.
Yeah.
And in theory, like that should be double uncool. But then because it's got such broad appeal, like everyone loved it. Like people on the streets liked it, girls liked it. So like, you know, and it's like, Richard, stop talking about Fulci to this girl that might like you because you've seen the same film. You know, 20-year-old me had way less of the finesse of the sort of rusty Lex Luthor you see before he's dead. But yeah, I don't know. I'm really chugging that film's dick, aren't I? But yeah, I don't know. It just, and I think everyone's got one somewhere. I was just lucky to do that. I was already way on the path to studying film and all that, and then that just solidified it. Because it's like, shit, look at that. That's like that came out of my brain. Sorry, I keep hitting my mic.
I still do the same. Even like if I put down my cup on a certain part of the table, there's like a whang. So where do you feel
bloody pop shield? Yeah.
Where do you feel that Shaun of the Dead sort of stands in terms of that Cornetto trilogy, if you do want to refer to it as that? You know, where do you think it is? Do you reckon it's the best? Yeah. I know you've talked about this before, but I knew this would annoy you.
No, because now I'm sort of like, after everything I've just done, I'm sort of like, no.
Oh, really?
Well, I don't know. The problem I have is, and again, this is something all me and my mates at the time and all my friends and like, you know, but fucking girlfriends and stuff I've had, it's always like, you know, I do find Hot Fuzz more watchable.
Okay.
I just find it a bit more watchable. I don't know why. because like it's so, I don't know how to explain it. It's like Hot Fuzz is like a lovely big steak, but like Shaun of the Dead is like someone came, like, you know, the best chef in the world came out and made a meal for me, but I don't want to eat it every day. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
I don't know.
it's very rich.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, so they're very close. They're very, very close.
Yeah.
I don't know if you watched we did a video very early on about The World's End. Super early on. Like, I didn't like that when I saw it, but the older I've become, the more I appreciate it, and I think it's actually much better than it gets credit for.
Same, 100%.
It's a great movie, right? Like, I think it's got a lot to say about getting older and changing.
Yeah, I think
refusing to change.
I really like it, but I have no fucking idea why. It's like I do like it, and I've rewatched it. I've rewatched it more than the other two. Somehow it was on Netflix, and I just found myself rewatching it. But again, I can't pinpoint, is it a particular scene? I don't know. It's like, and I can see the strengths of the other two, you know, in terms of like the jokes, and they're like maybe better. But there's something about The World's End that maybe it's more because I like a lot more.
Is it your favorite? Is it your favorite?
Dare I said maybe, yeah, of the three. Not that I dislike anything really that Edgar Wright's done, particularly in terms of that trilogy, but there's just something about it that keeps me coming back. I think, you know, the sort of core cast is super strong. But mind you, it's the same in Hot Fuzz and Shaun of the Dead. Maybe Hot Fuzz might be the weakest cast. Nah, you see him chatting out of a hole now. Like Dalton's and Hot Fuzz.
I do think, yes, I know. Like, the one thing that still annoys me about The World's End is that they didn't use. I wanted Pierce Brosnan, as you probably know from our channel, with low level obsession with Pierce Brosnan. Yeah. But I wanted Pierce Brosnan more. I wanted him to have the level of visibility in Hot Fuzz, in World's End, that Dalton had in Hot Fuzz. And he's kind of got like an extended cameo, and it's a bit like, oh no. Like, he should have had something a bit meatier to be getting on with. I don't know.
Yeah. But it's weird that obviously, as someone who's such an affinity for, you know, the zombie films and that genre, that Hot Fuzz does still sort of take the top spot. Because I know when I first saw Hot Fuzz, I understood more of the references for sure. It wasn't until I'd rewatched like Shaun of the Dead with the trivia track, which is unbelievable, that I understood more, that even just some of the wee sound bites and like, we're coming to get you, Barbara.
Oh my God!
You know, it's so there's so many of that.
Full cheese pizza. Like, we'd be glad if you could join us, and like all of that stuff.
Yeah,
like, and then like and like Ed Frost like quotes Flavor Flav and all that. Like,
yeah,
all that. Like, it's so. What annoyed me at the time with The World's End was The World's End kind of binned off the reference stuff, and I was a bit kind of like, you know, this is a thematically linked trilogy, and to decide to bin that off within that trilogy is wrong.
Yeah.
But I watched it later and was like, this is about refusing to let go of the past and how perhaps you should grow up.
Yeah.
And I was sort of like, okay, I'm going to keep still making stuff on YouTube, but you are right.
Yeah.
You know,
it's such an interesting trilogy that even now we can still talk about it and, you know, like assess it critically. Like, for me, I maybe feel Hot Fuzz is maybe 10 minutes too long for me. I feel it's slightly too long. It's
long, man. It's like 2 hours 10 or something, isn't it? It's long. I mean, I find I don't know, they're all a bit masturbatory for me, so I'm sort of all right with it.
Yeah,
you'll go long wank. Yeah, okay. Yeah. I'll tell you what. Do forgive me if you've heard this before, and I don't know if anyone's going to go, oh look, Richard Jackson's on, and click on this, because that seems unlikely. But if you have, thank you. What changed my opinion on The World's End? I went to see The World's End when it came out, so 2012. So I'd have been 29 or 30. No, 29. That's how maths works. Yeah, I'm 29. Yes. And I went with my missus and some mates, my girlfriend at the time. Sat and watched it and was really underwhelmed. I was kind of like, oh, I mean, that doesn't quite work for me. I mean, it was good. It was better than most things. The filmmaking was superb. The music was superb. The cast was superb. And I was like, yeah, fine. And then 2 or 3 years ago, I put it on Netflix, having aged a bit, you know. And here's what happened. When I lived in my student house, when I was younger, I lived with some really good mates, and there was Tom, and Andy, and they were top guys. Like, and I loved them. And I was like a year older than them, but you know, it was fucking great. And we used to sit around smoking weed and watching movies. We were all film study students, and we just do all nighters watching movies and stuff. And that situation was a bit kind of like Shaun of the Dead. You know, the two guys sat around the house, and that was great. And then what happened was, despite being younger than me, all three of them are now married with 2 kids, and they have like these insanely grown-up lives. They're dads, and they are some of my favorite humans. Like, I love them to bits.
Yeah.
But I found increasingly when I went to meet them, it was like, oh yeah, well, you know, she's pregnant with the next one, and we've got a house, and the wedding's in June. What are you doing? And I was sort of like,
you don't even need words.
Same.
Yeah.
Same. And then I realized I fucking watched it, and I was like, shit, I'm that guy. Like, I'm not the crazy, I'm not as, because he's depicted as being horribly tragic.
Yeah.
But by comparison to them, I felt like him, and having grown up a bit and stuff, and I suddenly really, really related to it. And I was kind of like, oh fuck.
Yeah.
I'm not that bad, you know. I do have my own business, and I pay my taxes, and I don't like live in a hostel and have a bag car and stuff.
Yeah.
But it was about how you grow up and move on, and I was kind of like, oh shit, yeah, I'm that guy. And then it's suddenly the whole thing. From that point on, I watched the first act, and I was like, oh wait, hold on, I get this now. Like,
yeah,
this is great.
I think there's something about, you know, like, again, I'm only 30, but a lot of my mates settled very early, and I think that's fine. But they just became very adult in their like demeanor. You know, I mean, there's no problem with getting married and having kids at a young age, but you can still be a bit of crack. You know what I mean? Whereas they all became like, as you say, the conversation becomes very banal, where it's like interest rates, what house can we get that's close to schools for, because I bust a nut inside her again, so there's not a fucking child on the way. And then they sort of turn to you and say, I've been with my now wife, but we've been together for like 12 years. Like, we're buying a house quite soon and stuff, but I still just kind of go, did you hear there's a white chocolate Twix? Like, I can't contribute. I can't contribute. Fuck all the overdrafts, credit cards, and, you know, contents insurance. And I'm just like, here, did anybody else got a flashlight? Or just
I made my own, mate. I made my own.
You make your Tupperware full of beetroot? I don't know.
Tupperware full of beetroot? Yeah, man. Pop it in a microwave. Off you get.
I always wanted to fuck a beaker. That's the thing.
Well, you know, you'd end up with that sort of dyed pecker looking like my lighting here. That's what happened.
You ever just fuck gammon? That's what you want.
I read. Look, sorry, sidebar. My bro used to get in the 90s. Used to get loaded in FHM all the time, and I used to read like Loaded in FHM, which like taught some really shit life lessons. Like, it was like it was funny and shit, and I like looking at the boobs, but like it had this massively misogynistic like through line. It was like, all women are secretly lesbians, don't want to have sex with you, and have no sense of humor. Yeah, like that was the undercurrent of those magazines. It was just really gross. But there was like funny cartoons, and there was pictures of Holly Valance or whatever. Showing my vintage. That's always Melinda Messenger, you know, 90s wank fodder.
Yeah, and, just a pair of tits with feet, basically.
Yeah. Someone on the internet has photoshopped that, and there's a whole thing. But anyway.
I remember, I have a mate that never got to see anything. Sorry to interrupt you, but I just thought of this. I haven't thought about this in years. I have a mate whose parents were very strict in that respect, even until he was about 16. And they would actually look at like anything he had taped on the TV. Is how long ago it was. And the example I can give is that he taped Ace Ventura, the first one, and then there's obviously the point where he fucks Courtney Cox. But they had actually had their own camera and filmed. The parents filmed themselves singing the song, the In the Jungle song, and then put it in to that tape over that bit. So like, he's watching Ace Ventura.
They filmed original material to censor and that's the maddest. I'm totally telling that story again. That's the maddest thing I've ever heard. So that's the wow.
Because I'm trying to think. I haven't seen it in a while.
Okay, hold on. Right. One sec. All I was going to say was there's an article in FHM about how people make prison pussies, and one of them involved minced beef, and I always thought, that's bestiality and necrophilia. I'm done with that story. I'm moving that story to one side, because what you have just told me is so much more interesting.
Did you say bestiality, by the way? or bestiality.
Oh, I wish I had. That's why you need a comedian.
Yeah.
No, I did not. I did not say bestiality. I wish I had done.
Okay, anyway, go on. Respond to my...
No. I don't know where to start with that. Like, I remember I had a friend whose parents were super Christian, and it was a similar thing. And when he was 16, and because they wouldn't even let him out of the house, like outside of school hours, like when he was 16, he went and formed a band and got tattoos, and it turned out he was gay, and like, you know, they were super not into that, and he kind of went and explored that, and now he's married to a dude, and he's very happy, and it's all very sweet, right? But they used to like get like the airline versions of stuff to show him, you know. Like,
Okay.
so like the super censored ones, they would get taped off TV or whatever, and he'd be allowed to watch the parent approved versions of things.
Right.
I'm very fascinated by people manufacturing their own material. It's just like, if you have that level of technology, like, cut it out. Like, oh, what's your favorite scene in Ace Ventura? Oh, the bit with my mum and dad singing in the jungle.
Yeah. Like Hawaiian shirts and coconuts.
Fuck it.
It's so stupid. Like,
that's so fucking weird, isn't it?
Oh,
like,
for sure.
That's deeply weird. I mean, just a completely unrelated story in terms of weird stories. I was just reminded yesterday by my brother of a story where my brother once saw, in the height of July or August, on a very, very hot day, he was on a railway station, I think in London, so it was like blazingly hot, and there was a guy in a three-piece suit just standing there like sweating, and he reached into his bag, pulled out a pint of double cream and started drinking it.
Double cream,
the blue Elmi, and just drank it. He was already gopping with sweat, and he drank cream.
Yeah.
And it's like, that must have been an alien.
Yeah.
It's like some kind of like, he has to have lactose or he dies. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, what was that? Who was that guy?
It was one of the Chuckle Brothers, you think?
I think it was a third Chuckle Brother, and what was in his bag was censored versions of films made by your mate's mum and dad. And he was going back to the fucking mothership. Like,
yeah. I'm trying to think in terms of my mate's parents. I mean, depending on what he taped or intended to try and watch, you know, depending on the film, that could have been a serious workload. Like, what if he wanted to watch, what do you call that one, Showgirls? Like, that would have just been the credits.
Yeah, there are ones where it's just like, but I like the idea of them with their video camera sort of gamely embarking upon, like, oh yeah, we need to make this censored version of Porky's or whatever.
1 foot in the grave or something.
Oh, that's so fucking weird. I thought I knew Absolutely. Some sort of parental censorship. So when we taped Total Recall off TV, and my dad watched it before us. He's like, "You're not having that. Like, that's too violent," because it's when it was first on ITV. And he hid it in the slow cooker, so we just waited till he went to work and watched it anyway. Like, that is it. And then we got a TV in our room, and it was all over. So, you know.
Is your dad an avid chef between having a barbecue and a slow cooker? And
the slow cooker, yeah. The slow cooker was full of hard drives. No.
He's making his own pasta out of the tape or some shit.
Yes, this is a 500 gigabyte casserole, son. Get involved.
Oh my God.
No, the time my dad cooked was just not good. Like, I remember because my mum's from Scotland, and she used to obviously go, sometimes take us, but when she went off up north to see her mum, and my dad would be left in charge of cooking, it's like, Dad, gravy shouldn't be black. Like, how did you do this? It looks like ink. What is this?
My dad was the same. He never did the cooking, but there was you know, during family parties, like, my mum's a really good cook, so she's one of those cooks that can cook 9 or 10 different big things and the kitchen's still immaculately tidy. You know, one of those cooks. I'm quite a good cook, but I leave a fucking mess everywhere. But there was one time, I want to say it was the New Year's Eve party leading into the millennium, because that was a big fucking deal.
Oh, Christ, Jesus, yeah.
And my dad's such a tube. And my mum was getting it a bit tight, and she was like, Pat, can you just heat up the plates? That's all I need you to do. I've got all the mains, sides, everybody's got a drink, you know, everyone's sorted. Just need you to heat the plates, keep all the food warm or whatever. And my dad was like, yep, no worries. And instead of just putting them in the microwave like a sane person, he went to the gas hobs, ceramic plate and full butt, and then they exploded. And it was like good plates too. And you're just like, you're like, that again, he raised me, so that's no wonder I turned out like
that's Dad's, because as soon as you said he didn't put it in microwave, I was like, he's put him on a hob, isn't he? He's put him on a hob.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he has. He's put him on a hob. Yeah, I feel my dad who in later life, bless him, has had many heart problems. Like whenever he tried to make proper food when mum was away, it was just weird, but we still ate it. But the only other thing I've reliably seen my dad cook, and my dad was a electrician for 50 years. Like he worked in the trade, so he worked on building sites and stuff. He just purely knew how to cook fry-ups. And you would come home, he'd cook fry-ups, so you'd come home from school for lunch, or like any day in summer, you just come home, my dad would be frying pork products and a tomato, or you just see him driving through town with a Ginster's pie. It seems to be all, yeah. And otherwise it's what my mum made him, and my mum was like putting broccoli on the plate to try and counteract all the fucking steak bakes that he's shoving in his face when she wasn't there. But always frying tomatoes, and he still does. Like he can barely walk, but like he can walk to the fucking stove. Do you want a bacon sandwich, son? Yes, please, Dad. Yeah, go on then, son. Do you want some bread sauce? Do you want me to batter it? Shall I fry the bread, Dad? Jesus Christ.
I love how he's offering you food in his condition and you're taking it and just be like, yep, you did. I'll not.
I'm sure if I was to Google for long enough, I could find some evidence that cooking helps. That totally helps, mate. Yeah, totally. Yeah.
I think I sort of learned to cook-ish when like I was a student, because I assume your student, particularly your student house, your student existence, wouldn't have been too different to mine in that it wasn't a particularly decent house and there was a lot of drinking, so not financially not the most stable. And like I remember, I suppose it's kind of the same now for anybody that works. You know, the day before you get paid to the day you get paid, there's such a difference. Like the day before, you're just kind of, you're not getting Deliveroo or any takeaways. You're kind of eating whatever's in the house. And when you're a student, the most grim thing I've ever fucking seen was my roommate John, and he was like a lazy bastard anyway. Like one morning I came in and he was buttering toast with the arse end of a spoon because he just wouldn't actually wash a knife, right? But one time he was so lazy, wouldn't wash any dishes, had no money, had very little food to his name. I came in and he was watching, like, we had like a chipped Virgin Media box. Know what they say when you chip illegal channels? So basically it was all the channels that was pitched to us. So it was basically porn, i.e. two Vietnamese women wearing trainers having a penalty shootout, right? And then he's watching that.
It's niche, but it's fine.
Here, whatever tickles your pickle. So he's in our living room. He's sitting on a full black bin bag full of rubbish as a furniture, and he's got a pint glass full of pasta and gravy.
I want to meet him. Is he like CEO of a bank now? They always are. Those guys are always got a better job than you now. Yeah. Like all of those people do.
You should meet his parents.
That's amazing.
Yeah, but he I don't know if it's creative genius or if it's just scraping the bottom of the barrel. But he also wiped his arse with a dental wipe because he had no toilet roll. So is that genius or is it
crumbs? I don't know. I think that's too close to the wind, mate. I just wonder that level of kind of. You know, that's for minerals, not animals. You can't put a dental on your anus. Yeah. I mean, I'm talking like I'd be above it.
Yeah. I think it's your attitude is the issue.
Yeah. I remember when I lived in a student house, like, because it was grim like that.
Yeah.
I was in a situation of just smoking too much weed, basically, when I was younger.
Yeah.
And my landlord was like a tight bastard, and he used to send his missus round to do the garden. Like one Saturday afternoon, I got out of bed and I was just wearing sort of like chunky high top trainers, massive boxer shorts. I was like a skinny little 20-year-old bloke, and I was just smoking a spliff whilst cooking bacon, having been awake for about half an hour. I just turned around from the stove to the kitchen window, and there's like a 60-year-old Bangladeshi woman in a sari just like making direct eye contact with me, and I'm just like behind my back, and I was just like, boys, I think they're onto us. And because we were all stoned, we had this massively paranoid week where we thought we were going to get evicted, and then it was like, hold on a minute, like, I've got a feeling we're not the first people to do drugs in this house. We might be all right. And we weren't evicted. It was an absolute shithole.
If there's anything, there's nothing worse than having a shit, dodgy landlord, because not only are they useless, but generally anybody in their employ is the same. I remember the first student house I lived in after halls, 6 of us all together, in Belfast, and the only real issue with the house, upon viewing it, really was that it needed painted. So he was like, if you put down your deposit now, we'll have it painted by the time you move in, which obviously didn't happen. So we rang him the second day we were there, going, go and fucking paint this house, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, right, I'll send Declan over now. They're always called Declan, right? And then we just hit, like, we were in the house. It was quite a warm day, quite a quiet street, not purely students. It was mostly residential. And we just heard like the faint sound of like a motorbike. And I was like, what the fuck is that? And then we opened the door and looked down the street, and it was Declan, and he's on like a wee tiny motor scooter, and he's got 2 tins of paint on each of the handlebars. And then he crashed, and all the paint went over the street.
That's some mothers do have them, isn't it? That's like a
very much so.
1970s sitcom premise. Like,
So stupid, like.
God. That's
Yeah.
every fucking rental, particularly stupid. But when we went to look at houses, oh fuck, with those boys, when we went to look around houses, I was in Southampton originally. This is one of the first ones we looked at. We met the landlord, and it was like whatever the equivalent of Gumtree would have been. I don't think it's out from the back of a paper or something, because it was 2005. It wasn't on. I can't remember how we found it. This dude, like this, like really ratty old geezer, comes out in like a donkey jacket with a rollie, just like, "Hello, boys, you all right? Yeah, house is down here." And he just smoked the whole time we were with him. We were sort of like, we all smoked, good sign at the time. And he took us around the house. And basically, the punchline is, it was revealed throughout the visit to this like really grotty house that we could live there, but we have to share with his daughter. And it was like, okay, weird, but all right. Like, none of us speak to girls anyway, so that's kind of a plus. And for some reason, he showed us her room, and it's like, well, none of us are gonna live in that room, and if I was her, I'd be quite annoyed. What there was in that room, and he just stood there talking to us about drainage and stuff. There's a double bed with like really quite a cavernous dent in the mattress, and then there was like a display shelf above the bed that had like 3 or 4 massive dildos on it, like huge dildos, and it was like, why are you showing? Like, we don't need to be in here. Like, if we chose this house, we wouldn't need to see this room.
Yeah.
And now it feels like you want us all to fuck your daughter or something.
Yeah.
And it was just like pizza boxes, lube, dildos, and just like loads of Disney shit. And it was like, this is a profoundly weird experience. Why are we here? Do you want 4 film studies undergraduates to impregnate your daughter? Are you making really niche porn? Like, what is this? What does any of this mean?
I also have a very similar-ish dildo story. You know, the dildo chronicles. I don't know if we went to look at houses, and this was a big mistake. I don't know if you ever had it where one landlord would take a whole group of students, like 40 or 50 of you, and bring you around like 15 houses, right? This was the day after St. Patrick's Day, right?
Oh, jeez.
First 5, we only made it to about 5, 2 good stories. The second house, this girl was clearly hungover, pissed off. She was in her kitchen, right? And she had the washing machine on, and her dildo was in the washing machine.
Of course it was.
Of course it was.
Yeah, of course it was.
And obviously, like, I'd been out the night before, so I wasn't hungover. I still had a bit of a buzz. So I was just like, "Is that your dildo?" And she was like, "Yep." Like, she just very nonchalant. "Oh, yep, that's mine. That's
Style it out, mate. Style it out."
So I was like, so I panicked, and I was like, "Any good?"
Any good? Oh, God.
And she was like, actually, what she said, she goes, "It would be good if you wanted more foam in your cappuccino." So yeah,
I love everything about that.
So it's not particularly powerful sexually, but if you want to froth up the latte.
Excellent stirrer, and presumably quite hot.
Yeah, big, just a big, not even wild big, but like a wee purple, just dildo in the washing machine.
It's what I love. Like, so I've guested on a few podcasts, yeah. Not like I'm a big shot, because like a lot of people have a podcast, and I love to do it because I just love having a chat, man. I'm all about this.
Yeah.
And sometimes you get like you get really structured ones and really quite serious ones. And it's kind of like, well, you know, why do you do what you do? There's other ones where it's just like, I've got a few things written down, but we're just going to talk. And it seems to always end up at dildos.
Yeah.
It's always this sort of like,
That's
it's
inevitable.
two blokes in their 30s talking about whatever, and it's going to end up being dildos, or
Yeah.
you know.
Then this was the day after St. Patrick's Day. The following house we went to was just like really sticky in terms of the floors, right? Then the next place we went to, as I say, post St. Patrick's Day in Belfast, and I don't know if you've heard of the Holy Lands, is the name of the student area in Belfast. I never lived directly in it, but it's basically a group of streets in the centre of the student area, like Damascus Street, Cairo Street, and it's just party central. Basically, not great houses, but it's great, particularly on Paddy's Day. There's loads of parties and stuff. So we're looking at this house the next day, and obviously the people who lived there still in their bed, because probably went to bed 20 minutes before we arrived. Went into this room, and there was just a guy lying naked, one sock on, and on his dick he had like a sandwich bag.
Of course,
and you're just going,
yes, of course. Yeah.
I was just going, contraception is a bit different now, because Jesus Christ. but as you say, like your landlord was still talking about like drainage, even though there's dildos in the wall. This guy walked in, the guy sprawled out, and then the landlord was like, "Yes, well, it's $250 a month, and it's a soft water area." And you're just going, "Bro, look at the fucking ravioli dick there."
You were 19 or whatever, right? Like,
yes,
that guy is so desensitized to this shit. Yeah. That he's just like, so because mine was like in Southampton, it's called the Polygon, and it's like 5 streets. It's like a polygon shaped with terraces of houses that have all been overrun by students, and it often makes the press because the people who just live there are just like, this is hell on earth, and they're right, it is.
Yeah,
but it's the same thing. It's just constant goings on. Like, so like, but everyone is so desensitized. So like, we lived in a terrace house. House immediately next door was growing weed in their front window, and it's honked of gear. Like, if out the back, it kind of all looked in on kind of a square. So on summer days, I used to go and sit on the roof to my mate Andy's room, just with a bottle of whiskey and a bag of weed, and just sit there and just like be and sit in the sun and talk to people and stuff, because it was just absolute chaos. It was absolute grotty student chaos. And I'm not saying I was cool, very far from it in actual fact. Yeah. But like, there were just random grannies who've lived there since 1946, and their lives have been ruined by like every other house has someone who thinks they're a drum and bass DJ, and everyone was on drugs. You know, like it was just fucking mad. Like, my friend Tom, his car got stolen from just up the road from that neighborhood, and like the cops got it back eventually, which was great because I had a book that was under the seat, which I got back. And they were kind of like
monologues. What the fuck?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. 10 copies. He'd left some weed in there. I just keep coming back to that because it's not, I don't do that anymore and whatever, but it was a big component of my life. And they kind of went, well, you know, they've been smoking drugs in your car. And he was like, have they? Oh. And it was his. They just nicked his car and driven up. And then they pinned that on the fucking car thieves, apparently.
Yeah. I think when you look back on it, I mean, you wonder how you ever did it. You know what I mean? But at the same time, I don't think I would change any of it, because at least you have stories. At least now, when you've lived in slightly better setup, you're like, I've done that. You know, like
oh fuck yeah. Well, I meant,
you know, stuff.
I did mean to say this earlier when it sort of come up, because I did, you know, I was in a relationship until like 2-3 weeks ago, which is,
oh shit,
it's awkward. But
sorry about that.
Yeah, cheers. It is what it is. But you know, I'm single. I'm 36, and I talk about bums on the internet, basically. And like, I have, as you probably know, someone who's watched me, I have a very, very immature streak, and it's something that I can't really do anything about. But I have a very puerile streak to me, and that kind of thing I find very, very funny. And one of my favorite things is just saying the rudest possible thing to my mum.
Yeah,
in front of my mum. Funny, like, that's the sweetest nectar. It's just the funniest thing in the world. And yeah. I'll do a video about a film, and I genuinely want to put, like, I'm very passionate about doing kind of accessible analysis of films that isn't bogged down in kind of too much academia and stuff like that anyone can watch and anyone can enjoy, and anyone, I hope, can look at something we've done and say, you know, I didn't think about that film before.
Yeah.
But I do have a very puerile streak, and I will, and that's Duncan, my co-host. Our problem is we share that, and that's why we bonded immediately, because we share that, and we will we've got a whole bank of dick jokes that don't even make it to air, and so quite often we'll make a kind of bum joke and then we'll bring it on a show and ha ha ha.
Yeah.
I get quite a lot is like, you're immature, you're a man child, you do this, you do that. And particularly because I don't know if you've watched them, but I sometimes do like little comedy skits about like my very good friends call me Jackson, right? Like most of the people in my life call me Jackson, they don't call me Richard. Like it just stuck. Teenagers, Jackson. So I did videos called With Jackson, and I created a character called Jackson who's a version of me who's like this insane scumbag, like this really gross kind of scummy guy. Yeah, have you seen those? You know what I mean?
have seen one or two, I believe, a while back.
Right. So that's kind of stuck, and it's like that's what you are. And the fact is, like, in actual fact, I run a business. I have a videography business. I hire people in and stuff like that. Again, I'm not trying to be a big shot. That's just my bread and butter. Like I have to think about health and safety. I have to think about taxes. I have to think about regulation. I have to think about transport. I have to think about, all this stuff. I have to think about the practicalities of all of it. I pay my council tax. Like I have to maintain my living situation with my house. Like I have, I have to make sure my mum and dad are looked after. So I've actually got this really mundane, quite grown-up life, but as a kind of single dude that swears online, it's just like, oh, well, you're a child. And it's like, I don't blame you for thinking that, but the reality of my life is actually quite mundane. And it's really quite a lot. It's more grown up than you perhaps think. Yeah. And I know that I don't do myself any favors. Like, I released a video this Christmas when I was 35 years old about the character created Jackson, who happens to share my name and live in my house and have my face stalking a girl from the local Sainsbury's. People just sort of think, well, that's you then. And I'm like, yeah, it's not. Like, so it comes at me a lot. It's like, oh, you're just immature and you do this, you do that. And it's like, I'm kind of perhaps a bit more dreary than you think.
Yeah. Do you think, how is your work, if you don't mind me asking, being affected during this whole lockdown thing? Because obviously, well, in terms of Valverde, if I do may say, not that the channel needed any more, because I like the format of the stuff you do, but it would seem, a lot of content, the people who create content probably freaked out when the lockdown became official. But you yourself and Duncan kind of introduced like the watch parties and stuff, and if anything, you sort of came out of it pretty fucking well, and to be honest, because I used to film my solo podcast on a Thursday, I've only been part of the watch party for like 10 minutes of the Fantastic Four, Roger Corman's one. So I haven't got a chance to see them, but it seems, like an even better way of engaging, particularly your Patreon audience, but just you seem to come out of it stronger, whereas it would have been easy to go, we're fucked, because a lot of your stuff is you and Duncan in the same room, or yourself and various other contributors in what I believe is your front room, talking about things. So you seem to have come out of it quite well, and I don't know financially, but in terms of the content, that hasn't dwindled from my point of view,
So in terms of my work, my work, it's a fucking shit show. I've lost thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds of work, and I don't do amazingly. Like I make enough to sustain me, and that's great, and I have a bit of profit, and I've invested my profit back. So I work mostly in events. So I very heavily, so I spend a lot of my time at like the Birmingham NEC and the London Excel. All of that's been cancelled. So my main bread and butter income is gone.
Yeah.
What remains is I'm an animator as well. So I've been doing animation for people, bits of editing for people, but it's all gone. Yeah. Like I'm still in touch with my clients and stuff, and certain ones have actually sort of had to furlough everybody and stuff, and that's been really difficult. People have just like I had the probably busiest year of since I went self-employed and started up the business, which was about 3 years ago. I had the best year ever last year. It was building on that. I've been dirt poor for a while, but that was really good. And then they took it all away, which sucked and continues to suck, of course. What has happened? Yeah, oh God, it sucks, man. But we were talking about kind of doing what we once called live commentaries, but now watch parties. We've been talking about that for a while because I was doing live game streams, which made me a little bit of money. Mm-hmm. We did, when Duncan and I did live streams together, we made a little bit of money, and that was cool. What happened was when lockdown hit, I don't know what it is about Thursday nights, but everybody seems to want to do their show on Thursday night, because I submitted a segment for a live stream based out of Northern Ireland, in actual fact, which clashed with our own stream.
Right.
So I was on our stream going like, well, there's a thing on the other channel, but don't watch that because we're on. We had a massive outpouring of support for Patreon in the first kind of weeks of the pandemic. So our Patreon tripled.
Yeah.
In the
Awesome.
first, which was amazing.
I think I signed up to Patreon during the lockdown. I can't remember when I.
You did, sir. Yes, you did. Thank you, and thank you very much for that. By the way. No, please, because you've been we've been on each other's radar for years and years and years. Like this is the first time we've actually spoken to each other, isn't it?
It's a love story for the ages.
The sexiest love story. It's all about dildos and washing machines.
Yeah.
But we had a massive sorry, I'm waffling. Massive outpouring of support on Patreon, firstly.
Yeah.
And then people were very, very generous giving money to the watch parties on Thursday nights. And in actual fact, I mean, I got a bit of money in the government self-employed scheme. Valverde Broadcasting is paying my rent.
Really?
And I don't mean like it's paying my rent and the rest. It's paying my rent. Like the first month of the lockdown, Valverde Broadcasting gave me £5 more than my rent. And we're not talking about and bills, £5 more than my rent.
Yeah.
So we really kind of found a kind of nice footing and a nice niche through this. And the fact that we persisted is something I'm very, very proud of. But it's also this insanely humbling. Like I can actually look at the people that support us and say, I could literally say I'd be homeless without you right now. Yeah. Like, that's mad. Like that, the whole time I was working with our previous collaborator, who I'm choosing not to name, like I made, considering that channel had 100,000 subs, I made not a lot, and now it's paying my rent. Yeah. And I think that's a bit of a bubble. It's not going to last, and it's like I said, it's an immensely humbling thing. But it makes me work double hard on this. So the reason I got all these lights up is because I just self-taped a thing, and I'm just doing more varied content because I just want to. It's hilarious. I got a fucking meeting. I get a little bit of universal credit, like not a lot, but Valverde pays me X, and then universal credit gives me Y at the moment. And I've got a meeting with them on Thursday for an update, and it's like, is that universal credit? Yeah, there's still a virus. Yeah, all right, cool.
Yeah, it's still here.
It's just like, what do you want me to say? You fucking mad cunts. Like, so very rambly, but that's been. This period of my life has been fucking interesting, man, because I was worried, and I still kind of am, actually. But
I think I've been lucky enough that at my day job I'm just working from home, but in terms of stand-up, lost a lot of stuff, like a lot of stuff that I was looking forward to. But I've been trying my best to sort of be productive during this lockdown. So again, I set up Patreon for this. And then these video podcasts that I'm doing with yourselves and some mates of mine are as a second podcast of my own. Because my podcast is usually just me by myself, which I don't know if you've ever done a solo podcast. It doesn't really get any less weird, to be honest. But again, I've started investing wee bits of kit and focus more on the online content, because that was my biggest issue as an act was, having an online presence, because I've been doing stand-up for a long time, and could probably go full time with it if I was a bit more present online in terms of sketches and even just Insta stories and just being active. So I've improved in that. But the perspective I've got during this lockdown was just thrust upon me. So I know at the start when the lockdown came in, I was like, this is going to be difficult because I like going to do stand-up gigs, and I don't know if I could like working from home, which I still don't really like, to be honest, but it's given me perspective whether I like it or not. Do you know what I mean? Yeah,
I mean, there is that kind of thing. Eleanor Carley handled our social for a very long time. It's something she just volunteered to do, bless her, and she's taken a bit of a break to look after herself. But Ellie just did all that social stuff for us, and she's taken a step back for a bit so she can just sort of, like I say, look after herself. So I've been sort of doing it, and I've always thought this because my business, like my videography business, I'm obviously clearly in charge of the social for that, and it's this fucking gaping maw, man. You know what I mean? Like this constant expectation, and particularly as a comedian, it's not, in an ideal world it would be a library, but it's not. It's a pit. It's a black hole. because things live and die for the first week.
Yeah.
And then there's something someone might look at later. Like you do sort of feel like you're endlessly shoveling. And I struggle with that because like I would like to do kind of more highlights and best ofs and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I find it very hard to get motivated to do that, to go through my own material, extract things and upload them, which I do sometimes. And I imagine as a stand-up comedian as you are, you're thinking about what's been taped and what are your best, when you do a good bit and it gets a good reaction, you want to go back to that footage. But that requires effort on your part to go back into that footage and take that bit out. And
it sort of ties in well to what I was saying there, because I've had, I did a solo show back in my original, I'm from a place called Strabane originally. I've been living in Belfast now for a decade, I'm not from there. But I did a solo show in the theatre back home, got it filmed professionally and looks great. And then I played a venue up here and got it filmed again. And when I set up the Patreon, which was 2 or 3 weeks ago now, one of them went up in full, and like as a private link on YouTube for the Patreon subscribers. And that was fucking painful. I didn't edit it, but I still had to go through it to make sure, like the very first one would require a serious bit of cutting, because there was a bit of family and stuff at the gig. So there was more like a few hackles and stuff from them. But even putting up, it boils back to, I suppose, you putting up anything on Valverde, you're going to have to deal with people that don't like your opinion, which is fucking stupid, because that's all it is, your opinion. But like putting up a sketch or a stand-up clip, like it's, people don't realize it's fucking terrifying, because you critique it, but then dickheads online, faceless wankers, can say all the shit, hang yourself, and you're like, here, it's only a fucking 2-minute clip about Groupon, for fuck's sake.
It's the most. Look, Matt. Here's something. So I've been doing this now for 7 or 8 years.
Yeah.
So we started doing Valve, and first things first, like I've got a secret fantasy that I'd love to be a stand-up comic, but I just don't have the fucking sand for it, man. Like I just don't have the balls. My ego's too fragile. I don't know if you saw it, but when we worked before with, I'll say his name, Oliver Harper, we did a live show in a pub in London. Did you ever see that?
I did see that, actually. Yeah, now you bring that up. Yeah.
Okay, we did a live show with a PowerPoint, and it was 50 people who all knew who we were and travelled specially to be there.
Yeah.
So it was stand up on very easy mode, to use video game terminology, and I wrote most of that, and it got a really great reaction. Yeah. Yeah. And to me, that wasn't real. It was brilliant, and it was one of the best nights of my life. But I'm not going to do it again, because I don't have the balls. I don't have the ego. Like, I do, or I've got too much ego, or whatever. It's too fragile for me to do that. I think if I got heckled, I would just crumble. Right. Yeah. So what you do is completely different to what I do, because I sit either with Duncan or I sit with a chat box, or no one is physically heckling me. Yeah. Right. So what we do is completely different. Yeah. However, one thing I've learned from interactions online in the last kind of most of a decade is that most people that come at you, firstly, they're probably not using the real name. They're hiding behind a fake name. Yeah. Secondly, if someone just comes at you with something, it's not usually about you, it's about them, right? Sometimes they're right. Sometimes you said something stupid. Sometimes you're not funny. But what I found a hell of a lot of the time is someone comes into a comment and goes, you're stupid, you're bald, you got a big nose, and you're not funny, right? Yeah. And the reason they're saying that is because their girlfriend left them, or their boss is a dick, or they've got a small cock, or whatever it is, something's going on in their life. And I used to be like, fuck you, you prick, don't talk to me like that, you fucking motherfucker. Yeah. And since I started Valverde, like there is the odd person. Some people are just shit flingers. Some people are just shit flingers, and all they want to do is tear you down. And if you kind of try and start a dialogue with them, they'll just double down on it. Ban them, delete them, doesn't matter. Yeah. There was an example last Christmas that fucking cut me quite deep, because like I think it validated what I thought. This guy came out and he kind of said, all you two ever did was mooch off Oliver Harper. You're not funny. Your content's shit, and you just repeat yourselves. Yeah. And I said to him, okay, thank you for that. I'm just sorry, you feel like that, but I don't think you're right. Mm-hmm. And would you like to talk about it? And then he kind of said to me, kind of like, "Oh yeah, tear me down because you're the big shot." And I just went to him, "No, I'm not." Honestly, basically, that conversation turned out. I just said to him, "Are you okay? Is everything all right?" And he said, "No, it's not. I'm having a really hard time at work, and I just wanted to feel in control for a couple of
Mm-hmm.
minutes." Like
Right.
that unfolded in a YouTube comment. It was mad, and I just kind of went, "Look, that sucks. You don't have to enjoy what we do."
Yeah.
But you need someone to talk to when it's that bad. Here's our email address. Just email us anytime you want.
Yeah.
And he just kind of went, I'm leaving now. I'm not coming back.
Fuck.
And I've had a few where I've just like, when people come out swinging for the fences, when they come at you with just the nastiest shit, like, and again, when it's obvious, like Duncan's a failed actor, Richard's a bald cunt, like, you know, Ollie was the only reason you're famous and blah, 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 because that's the guy I used to work with and whatever. Like when they come up with this really obvious stuff,
Yeah.
it's probably not about you. It's probably about them.
Yeah.
And if you say to them, "Why are you doing this?" they'll either double down and just start flinging more shit, in which case they're sort of beyond help and they're probably just a teenager off for a rise. But sometimes they kind of say to you, "I'm not all right and there's something wrong." And quite a lot, I think, of what happens is like it's a genuine, like, I don't want to be too serious, but it's like a mental health issue. Like people want somehow to take control, and you're sort of like, it's like a game. You're like a cartoon character to them.
Yeah.
And I've had a couple, but that guy in particular, and I'm not a fucking saint. I'm not pretending I saved his life because he just fucked off. But I was just like, "Are you okay? Are you okay? And why are you doing this?" And he just was like, "You know, look, I'm unhappy." And
Yeah.
it's mad. It's mad.
It's
Isn't
heavy.
it? Like,
It's very heavy for sure.
well, because they look at us like we're not real people. But then the easy thing to forget is because we look at them in the same way. When someone's got a fucking little avatar of Dennis the Menace and a stupid name, they're not real to us and you're not real to them. And sometimes they just do it because they don't have any power. And it's because their girlfriend's cheated them or their boss's account, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
And I've really moderated. When I was younger, I used to just come out swinging and just go like, "You're a fucking nobody. You've never made anything. You're a prick." And now I will always go in. I will try and go in. I'll either ignore it or just say like, "Are you all right? Why are you doing this?"
Yeah.
That's the place to start. You should never come in and just say, "You're a prick for calling me a prick." It's just like, "Why are you calling me a prick?"
Yeah. Do you think it's gonna? Do you find it has it increased or decreased during this whole lockdown period? Do you find, because you know I think a lot of people will probably, in terms of the mental health, get it very tough during or have done during this time. You know, because I find people are going to get either very angry, very happy, or very weird because they haven't been out, and maybe you know, like, and I don't know if you found, particularly now, I don't know what the crack is over your end, but we've been told that as of like the 6th of July or something to that effect, no pubs and restaurants can reopen with like table service. And I don't know if it's similar.
It's similar, I think.
Yeah. And I've been thinking about how I was happy about that, because I feel like I'm just turning into a weird bastard, because obviously it's just me and my wife. I haven't been home to see the folks or anything. And I'm at the stage now, because the lockdown's been so long, that because there's 19 different streaming services, I'm watching the most random shit in the most random order now. And I just feel like, you know, when you say to people, "Oh, what did you do?" And you're like, "I watched Nosferatu and then Cool Runnings." And you're like, "What the fuck is going on with my life?"
Cool Runnings.
It's just like, I feel like I'm going to be extremely weird post-lockdown.
Oh, there's this strange expectation where we're all going to have to, in 25 years, tell our kids what it was like it was the Blitz.
Yeah.
And it's like, I've got to say, I get what, so I'm self-employed, full-time self-employed, and part of income from this and blah, 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 blah. My housemate works for Cambridge. I live in Cambridge. He works for Cambridge University, right? And me and my housemate, we've been mates for 25 odd years, and we live together. And he's able to work from home, and he's going to work from home till September.
Mm-hmm.
So to him, that was a novelty, but for me, it's the norm. So all this kind of stuff, when I'm seeing people online and all these, you know, all the TV ads are catered to it, and all the TV comedy is kind of like, oh, what are you going to do? Have another cup of tea and a pot noodle. You're at home. And it's like, that's my life, motherfucker.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, you've got no money and you're cutting your own hair. Yeah, welcome to Jackson time, motherfucker. It's been like this for 4 years.
Yeah.
Like, absolutely. Because I do post-production from home I would say I spend 5 days out of 7 at home. When things are normal, I spend 5 days out of 7 at home, and then maybe 2 days out of 7 on location on average. So I'm either shooting somewhere or I'm traveling to shoot somewhere. You know?
Yeah.
So like I'm away at a conference center somewhere or on set, like, or in a studio, and then I'm at home and I'm at home editing and I'm at my own hours, my own time. And I've been doing that for a few years. And so all this kind of like, oh, it's so weird, isn't it? Oh, I'm being at home.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of us in creative industry just kind of like, fucking tourists. Like, no, I'm sorry, Rory, saying that to you. I kind of am.
Yeah, that's fair. I can take that.
No, but it's weird because now I've got I've got, the weird thing for me is I've got company again. Like I used to work in an office, and before that I worked going back to the very beginning of the podcast, I didn't work in retail. I worked in hospitality, which is an equivalency. So I worked in hotels and bars for a long time. But I've got someone here all the time.
Yeah.
So like I used to like walk down bollock naked at 11 o'clock in the morning, look at the post, have a cup of tea, and that's kind of like, oh, I've got to sort of moderate my behaviour somewhat.
Yeah.
You know, because he's just downstairs at his laptop all day, and he's got like a fucking overseer, you know, on the sort of Teams viewer, making sure that he logs in at 9 and logs off at 5 and stuff.
Yeah.
So he's got to like do it all properly, and I'm just sort of there.
It's really monitored and stuff. I think
Like, Cambridge Uni, man. They were
I think like it must be, this is something I always thought about when I was at uni studying film, because obviously I lived in a shit student house. Most of them boys were studying psychology. There's some of them that were training and teaching. And then when you come along and like, I'm doing film studies, so they're, you know, doing research about the human mind and looking to impact people's lives. And you're just sitting there going, well, I'm doing an essay about the significance of water and Jaws. You know what I mean? It's fucking, it's kind of still a thing now. We don't really change lives, I suppose.
Well, I kind of think I still rail against that, actually. Because, absolutely. Like, I do think it's a legitimate avenue of study. And I certainly think there's an argument against it. But I'm not going to pretend. And I think I have I don't need to declare my bias, you know. And maybe I'm lucky. Maybe I'm lucky because I don't think the majority of us get to make money from film that do film study. Okay. I'm not against those kind of liberal arts humanities subjects. I think all of academia is equally important. I don't like when it's just like, well, that shouldn't exist because it's not business or it's not psychology. I mean, and clearly there's a big division between humanities and STEM subjects, of course. But I just remember, because when I did it, like film studies was fairly new. And what happened was like only one of the colleges in Cambridge did film studies A-level. Like, and I didn't even know that was a thing. And someone was like, oh yeah, Steve's gone to this college. He's doing film. And I was just kind of, he's doing fucking what now? Sorry, pardon, what? So I changed my college before at the selection level. I wasn't there. I was going to go to one. I went to another because there was film to do. And I had two teachers there called Tony and Tanya who were incredibly inspirational to me because they showed that there was so much more to learn. And I favoured the academic side really more than the practical side. And I really think there's a valid thing there. And, you know, a lot of my degree, it's probably the same for you, but there's like a shit ton of Freud on my degree. Was that the same for you? Did you have lots of psychoanalysis and
wee bits here and there? Yeah.
Because we crossed over into our discipline, crossed over into psychology quite a lot, or psychoanalysis, and we had Jung as well, and like the different disciplines.
True.
And you know, there's an element of economics because of the economics of Hollywood. And the thing is, then like it was way more of a joke because when I did A levels, like it was only one college in town that did A level, that filmed at A level. And then when you went around the unis, like it was pretty ropey. And I had my first uni was ropey as shit, and I changed to another one because it was kind of ropey. And people have always said to me, like, that degree is a waste of time. And when I was doing it, it's like, you're doing a Mickey Mouse degree, it's a waste of time.
Yeah.
And they said that to me time and time again. And the problem I had was when I ended up then going into hospitality for like 10 years. So I was doing kind of hotel work and it sucked. And I was always saying to myself, you know, they were right. It was a waste of time. You know, you're a fucking hotel monkey because no one will give you a job. Yeah. But as of this year, last year, I spent 3 weeks in Hollywood making a documentary like about Robert Englund. I spent 2 days in Robert Englund's company. I met Lance Henriksen and Tony Todd and all these people, like directors and actors and shit like that, right? Yeah. Through this, I get paid to apply the theoretical framework that I was taught in that course. Yeah. Right. So and as I said before, it's paying my rent. Yeah. Right. And maybe I'm the outlier, but I get
That's that's a good point.
I'll go into bat. I will go into bat for it as a valid subject because, frankly, it might have taken a while, but it got me where I needed to be. And here I
Yeah.
am.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. I suppose I didn't think of it like that, but I suppose in terms of what I do now, I mean, I learned a lot about screenwriting in that degree. So maybe it's just like an old juvenile attitude that I've always had, but didn't develop at all.
Please do not rule out that I'm full of shit.
Yeah.
never rule that out, please.
Yeah.
That was very ranty, but it's something that I was going to bat for because it was something that was used against me a lot.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, I didn't think. To be fair, I didn't think of it like that. So you're probably right. To be fair, but I suppose it's these things. If if it was easy to get into that side of the industry or any sort of entertainment, if it was easy and you could do it in a week, sure, wouldn't every dickhead be doing it? I mean, I suppose there has to be a grind. Because then, obviously, I know if you're at conferences, there's probably a lot of jobs you take that are just bread and butter and they're fine and you've no real interest, but you can go get the job done. But something like working on the Robert Englund thing, that must have been, didn't even feel like work, dare I say it? It must have been.
If I sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, look, if I get struck by lightning tomorrow, I made a film in Hollywood.
Yeah.
I mean, anyone who walks down Hollywood Boulevard with their iPhone can say that, but I made a movie in Hollywood with movie stars.
Yeah.
Right? And it might be all downhill from here. I don't fucking know. Probably will be. Look at State of Me. But like, I get to say I did that, and I genuinely owe it to those people because like I did do a bit of practical and I the theoretical framework that taught me, I applied that all the way through that shit. And yeah, I do corporate shit, dude. Like the Robert Englund thing, I've worked on a few movies. I did a couple of days on Blinded by the Light, the Bruce Springsteen jukebox musical that came out by Gurinder Shah.
I didn't hear about it, but that's still pretty cool.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what happened, right? And again, just take it from me. I'm barely getting rent and I spend most of my time wanking. But when I was doing, I did a couple of days on Blinded by the Light, which was, it was like a Bruce Springsteen, jukebox musical type thing by Gurinder Shah, who did Bend It Like Beckham. So it's about kind of Asian teenagers growing up in Luton in the 80s. Yeah.
Okay.
And I did a couple of, I did one day. So it was a couple of days. One day, I did one day of prop work on that because one of my friends provides all the computer props for most of entertainment. So I did all the computers for like Black Mirror and stuff like that. And I did prop work on that. And it was a fun day. And it was crossover for me because I was programming BBC Micros, which is a bit weird and crazy. And whatever. And I did my day on that and I got my few hundred quid. I went home and it was like working on a proper kind of movie. When I was out in LA working on the Robert Englund doc, which I must stress was a kind of dirt box, low budget doc, which I'm very proud of. It's not finished yet. When we were driving around LA, I think it was I don't know who's distributing it in the States. One of the lots, like maybe the Warner's lot in the US, had massive fucking posters for that movie.
Yeah.
Hanging up when I was driving around over there. And I was like, okay, I did basically nothing on that film. I've got like assistant prop credit.
Yeah.
Here I am making like a doc. And just by coincidence, the last film I worked on is hanging up on that wall. Come on, you've done you've dented it a little, like
for sure,
dent, like And again, if I got struck by lightning tomorrow, fuck it, I'll take it. Yeah, that's all good. I've got some credits.
That must have been surreal, but it must have sort of vindicated you to sort of go, well, at least I'm involved in stuff that, particularly because obviously you said that you're a film fan, you're a horror fan, so you get to be in the same room as Robert Englund. I mean, did you actually get to speak to him much, or?
Oh fuck, mate! You can't shut him up. I'm not
really
being mean. like your relative that won't be quiet. Like,
yeah,
he's lovely, but fuck a duck. Like we did 2 days with him. So we went to his house. I'm not going to dox him, but I can't remember where he lives. But he lives in like a little lovely Californian surf town. Because he's like a West Coast dude. So he was like a little surf boy and that.
Okay.
And so he grew up, he's proper West Coast, like surfer kid. And he lives in like a little surf town with his dog and his missus. Like he's lovely, but he's like a sort of mad granddad. So we interviewed him at his house and we interviewed him at some hotel in London back in November, I think it was. And the interviews for that project, we interviewed 42 people. The average duration of the interviews was 30 minutes to an hour. he spoke for 3 hours each time, and it's just like you set him off and he goes.
Oh
I
my
was just
God.
like, cool. And then he like took us for lunch after. Like we went out, we took us to his favorite restaurant, and we had lunch and shit. But like basically, he's lovely, but he talks at you. You don't talk
Oh,
to him or with him. He talks at you at
right.
length. Like I know the motherfucker's blood type and shoe size. It was just
Yeah.
like much like I've done to you for the last 20 minutes.
Oh
It's just
no, not at all. Fuck. It
talking at you.
must be cool doing that because, like, to be honest, like, I know that's a cool thing to be involved in. I don't really know much of his work outside of the fact that he's Freddy Krueger, if I can be totally honest. And I
Mate,
believe there was a remake, and he wasn't even. It was the guy from Watchmen, I think, actually did.
yeah.
It was dick.
I gotta say, like, because I'm a horror fan and stuff, but I was never the hugest Elm Street fan.
Really?
And I was not really like I was always more of a Jason guy actually. And we
Yeah.
interviewed Kane Hodder for this project, oddly enough. But so I was more of a Jason guy, and I'm kind of a horror fan. But when so Dead Mouse Films, which is like Gary, Adam, and Chris, who produced the movie and directed the movie, because I was DOP on it. I think because they made the film RoboDoc about RoboCop, and RoboCop's like my favorite movie and stuff.
Yeah.
Like everything I think I know about film, they know so much more than me. Like they absolutely put me to shame in every facet. So for most of that shoot, and we were out there for 3 weeks, I just shut the fuck up and let them get on with it. Like the visual aspect of the film was my design. I designed the film when it comes out. It's very I've used lots of browns and reds because to me that's the color palette of the Freddy character. So all of the interviews exist in that color palette, and I kind of wanted it to look quite like the in the Freddy movies when they go to the dream world is often red because it's in like those boiler rooms.
Yeah.
So I wanted the interviews to look like that kind of rusty boiler color because that's the point on the color wheel where those films exist.
Yeah.
So my lighting design for the interviews was like that. So that was my approach.
Yeah.
In terms of what I know about him and his life, like I don't really know anything. Like I know that he was Freddy. I know he's in a bunch of stuff. What I've learned was like he's had this insanely storied life, and he went to RADA. He spent a lot of time in London when he was younger.
Yeah.
So he trained in RADA and lived in London, and he knows London intimately. And he told us all about London. And like when we went to see him, he was in his favorite hotel and shit, like some fancy ass hotel in Mayfair and stuff.
Yeah.
And like, he loves England, and oddly enough, and he knows all of Shakespeare. He's done like loads of really interesting roles. He's like this insanely well-versed professional. Like all the directors he worked with were just kind of like, look, you don't even need to tell him. He knows what lens is on the camera, where the lights are, and how to make it reflect off the glove. Or where, like he's just this amazing sort of powerful performer. Like it's really, really interesting. Like I wasn't that interested in him before that, I must say. But then it's like, do you want to come and meet Freddie and do a doc? I was like, yes, of course I do. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Having been out there and met him, it was just like, dude, he's a really fucking interesting guy. He is like being stuck with the granddad though.
Oh yeah.
He's really interesting, fascinating dude.
Yeah, that's really cool. I mean, I don't know, the horror genre's a bit lost on me at times, but from going through Netflix and Amazon Prime repeatedly during this lockdown, Jesus, there must be 13 sequels to every horror film ever. Like I was looking through, you're saying about the Jason films. I think there's one called like Jason Takes Manhattan or something
Manhattan.
like that.
That's Friday the 13th Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan.
Yeah, and I'm like, is it a fucking Muppets film? What the fuck is that tagline?
The worst part is they don't get to Manhattan till the last 20 minutes. That's the most egregious part of Jason Takes Manhattan. Very annoying. Very annoying.
Like, what do you think about what do you think of the excessive sequels? Like, I mean, let's face it, they're usually tripe. I mean, you get the odd gem, maybe,
sure.
But
well, the discussion to be had there is that horror never dies.
Yeah,
like westerns come and go. Sci-fi's always there, but kind of peaks.
Yeah,
period stuff's always there. Like horror never dies. Like, and I never begrudge the new horror films. I'm not a fan of them, like The Conjuring and stuff like that, and Annabelle and all that. I'm not bothered, but they serve an audience of teenagers that go see them on a Friday night, and that's what they're for. And there is nothing wrong with that. I mean, horror is kind of like pornography, and that it seems to scratch a cultural itch and it will never go away.
Yeah.
Like it's always been there. Like as soon as like I'm quoting like a Craig Charles book that I got when I was a teenager, but it's like as soon as someone invented drawing on caves, someone drew a dick or words to that effect.
Yeah.
But horror. If you look at horror, it's at the inception of film. You mentioned Nosferatu
Yeah.
earlier. So it's Murnau, and then you've got oh bloody hell. I'm forgetting directors' names, but basically, horror's always been there since the German tradition, and the German directors took that expressionist tradition to Hollywood, and then you have the Universal films, and the Universal films were based on those classic literary characters, and then they happened to the copyrights on those happened to pass into the public domain in the lifetime of those films. Yeah. So then people were able to remake them endlessly. So the baton was passed from kind of the Universal tradition to Hammer because they could make Frankenstein or Dracula or whatever, and Nosferatu itself was a rip-off of Dracula. And the thing is with horror is that you can make it cheaply and you can make it quickly.
That's true. Yeah.
To some degree, horror always seems to land, so it's always profitable. And something such as, every 10 years, something costs fuck all money and makes a ton of money. So for 1999, it was a Blair Witch Project.
Yeah.
And then I think 2000 and something. What was the bloody Paranormal Activity?
Right. Yeah, and there's like 9 of them.
Right, and they and if anything, they get cheaper and cheaper. That baseline of film always exists because teenagers always want to be scared. Kids want that cheap thrill because they're not really movies in the traditional sense as much as they're roller coaster rides. So people will come to them just to experience something, and they've been doing that for over 100 years, which is incredible, really. And as soon as someone turned on a camera, they made Nosferatu. Like the silent era is full of those examples, like Fritz Lang, who started in Germany and then came over to the States, continued that tradition. So M is kind of like a murder mystery, but it is very kind of horror-y. And that's about a child molester, and then he came over and did noir. And all of that, by the way, like you have no film noir without horror. Like, it doesn't exist. And the influence of horror, I think horror is like the root of this stuff. And so many genres spring out of it. Because you wouldn't have the Coen brothers doing anything without film noir, but you wouldn't have film noir without Fritz Lang.
True.
Then there's a whole discussion to be had about the German, the pre-Nazi, like the Weimar period of German cinema. It was an incredibly vibrant, inventive period of cinema.
Yeah.
See, I told you I was a pretentious cunt.
You're one or two,
it's all right. You did film studies as well, so it's fine.
Yeah, true. Yeah. I was just thinking. So in terms of, not you can go specific to like zombie films, but has there been anything recently in horror zombie that actually did impress you, or do you feel now it's kind of like just a sort of recycled formula? Was there anything that sort of stood out for you in terms of horror?
It's been I don't know. I tell you what I did do. I went to see. I haven't seen the second part of the new It film, but I watched the first one.
Yeah.
And I went to see it. It was when I was reviewing films for YouTube in my previous guys, and we went to see. I went to see It Part 1 in a crowded cinema on a Friday afternoon, like 2:30.
Yeah.
And the reason that cinema was crowded is because it's between 2 sixth form colleges, and they all get out at 1.
Mm-hmm.
So it's full of teenagers. And I was watching this movie going like, this movie's kind of shit. Like it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. However, I was surrounded by like 16, 17, 18-year-olds, and they were having the time of their lives. And that film was produced by New Line, and New Line did they ended up combining the Freddy and Jason movies, but they did a ton of 80s horror and stuff.
Yeah.
And I was kind of watching that going like, I don't really like this, but it's not for me. And I have to acknowledge that 20 years ago, I was them.
Yeah.
And they are having the fucking time of their lives. These kids were losing their shit. They'd never seen anything like it. And I was like, this is piss weak, but I'm not 16.
Yeah, true.
It's important to acknowledge that, like, it's not always for you.
Yeah.
In terms of zombies, I quite like Black Summer on Netflix. Did you watch that?
What's it
the
called?
Zombie kind of series, Black Summer?
Black Summer? No, but I will check it out for sure.
It was a cool zombie miniseries. It was cool. Like, because, I'm pretty... It's sort of like, how they say that people who watch really extreme pornography become very jaded to sex. That's me and zombie films. Like, I've seen so many and every variety. They're like, it's very difficult to impress me.
Yeah.
But I really like it. I thought there's some very interesting stuff in it.
Yeah.
It's kind of low budget sci-fi channel thing.
Yeah. I think the last thing that I liked that maybe give me those sort of cliched jump scares to an extent, but I thought was quite good was the Woman in Black with Daniel Radcliffe.
Oh yes, yeah. It's
Yeah,
cool.
I
It's
actually
got
thought
a
it was
kind of
quite good.
hammer vibe to it, hasn't it? It feels
Yeah,
like a kind of 60s. Yeah,
yeah,
it's cool. It's a cool movie.
yeah.
It's kind of, something that I don't know if you've ever heard me say this. 'Cause I say it a lot. I have a real difficulty with being asked direct questions. If someone says to me, "What's your middle name?" I go, fucking,
Dildo.
yeah, dildo. It's washing machine dildo Jackson. I can't. When I'm asked for specific examples of things, and this sounds like the worst kind of get out ever, but when someone wants for specific examples of it from me, I just kind of, I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah,
I just sort of suddenly just kind of like, I don't know. Because I've probably seen a bunch of horror movies recently, but I can't.
I think I'm the same when it comes to asking those sort of questions. So it's cool. But one thing, like this has got
Match made
nothing
in
to
heaven.
this has got nothing to do with anything that we were just talking about. But it's just come into my head, and I've been asking quite a lot of people this. So obviously, during people have been stuck in the house during this lockdown, I'd like to just, if you can, describe your your interpretation of being house drunk, because I know you can be drunk at a house party, but you know,
House drunk.
you've been pub drunk, you've probably been nightclub drunk, and obviously you've been day drunk. But I think I can't put my finger on it. There's something different about just being in the house drunk. Like there's not,
Well,
maybe you're just kind of celebrating, but if it's just you and someone else, and you have 19 tins of Stella or something like something really excessive, you know what I mean?
I live with one of my best mates, and I've been self-employed for 3 or 4 years. So maybe, to be fair, before this, I lived with my ex-girlfriend for like 5 years, and we both like to drink. So I wonder if I'm just, I'm just jaded to house drunk.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just kind of, particularly because my mate that I live with, we used to always go meet at the pub, and now it's like we live across the road from a fucking supermarket, and it's like, do we spend 10 quid each on 4 beers each? Well, not even, it's fucking 15 quid.
Yeah.
Or do we get like 4 tins each for 2 quid, for 4 quid or 3 quid?
Yeah. Get the wee, tiny ones, those fucking stumpy,
little fucking stumpy, pretentious IPAs. Go fucking suck a dick, mate. I'll take my Stellas and my Strongbow. Fuck off. I'm not in it because I want agave cactus juice. Go suck one.
Yeah, I don't want a watermelon stout. You know what I mean?
That makes me.
I had a chocolate and chili stout one time.
Yeah, I've had something in nature. We have a big beer festival here, and that seems to be because dark chocolate and chili apparently is a thing. Yeah. I don't like. I shouldn't say this to an Irishman, but I've never got on with stout. I just don't get it. It's like drinking gravy, and I like gravy.
Yeah,
I would rather gravy.
No, that's fair enough. Yeah, it's better as a laxative more than anything, I think.
I have a theory though, relating to what you've said. I think there are different types of seasonal drunk.
Okay, elaborate.
I think there are different. Yeah, well, you know, like. The root of this is like, you know, when you're drunk in a pub or indoors and you go outside and the air hits you.
Oh yeah.
If that happens in December when it's fucking cold,
yeah,
it's so much worse than summer. Like summer, you do that and you walk out and kind of go like, oh, I'm pissed, but I can smell cut grass. Like when you go out in December, it's just kind of like it's like having 2 Vicks vapor rubs up your nose, and it just sort of like gets all the alcohol into your brain, and it just like, I'm convinced that the winter drunk but the kind of winter drunk numbs you to the cold, but the summer drunk, I find I'll sort of like walk out of someone's house to the pub and I've got to walk home 2 miles, and it's kind of like, this is all right. Walk out to the cold drunk, it's like, oh, this is the drunkest I've ever been. I can taste colours, I can smell sounds. What's going on? Jesus Christ.
So would you think then there's a difference as well with the sort of, say, the winter drunk, but during the day? Because there's obviously the difference between being day drunk and night drunk.
Yeah, sorry, let's drill down, because I think I've derailed the conversation. Yeah, absolutely. Because, day drunk, what I like about day drunk is it's kind of transgressive. Because, you know, when you sort of go for those sort of like, and, you know, I'm a big fan of, like, I like festivals, man. I've been to God knows how many festivals, and that's all about drinking in the morning and stuff. Yeah. But, and even like Brighton Pride, where you start in someone's house, it's like you're drunk in the day. But there is something, I don't know, something about the air and the light when you walk out pissed at like 1 PM. And it's inherently transgressive. Yeah, I think that's part of it. Like, it's so, because you shouldn't be, and that's why day drunk like that is basically a treat. You shouldn't do it too much, because that's alcoholism. but it's like you shouldn't, because it's inherently transgressive. And if you're ever like, I have been this guy, but you know what? You're on a bus at like 8 a.m. and you look out, and there's like a really wasted guy walking down the street, and he might as well have a siren on his head. It's just like, he's so obvious. It's just like, you are so, and they're all, and the thing is with that, because someone in that condition tries to hide it. They're trying not to be a guy, but it's like, you are so fucking drunk, mate. You are wasted. And we've all been him, because you know when you've been to some house party and you walk home at like 8 a.m. and it's like 2 miles, but it takes you 4 hours. Yeah, and you try to sort of look sober, but it's just like, people just can detect that transgression. They know you're drunk. So when you tip out somewhere at 1 p.m, and when you're in like Amsterdam or fucking like Malaga or something, everyone's the same. Or at a music festival, everyone's the same. Yeah. But if you do it into like Chepstow Centre, you're just like absolutely bollocks. It's like,
it's always frustrating anytime I've been day drunk, because I think like in terms of ratio, you're talking 1 day pint is the equivalent of 3 night pints, I think. Something to that effect. But I've always like, if I get a half day on a Friday from my day job or whatever, and we go to Witherspoons or some shit, you leave and you're day drunk and you're like, maybe it's just me being lazy, but I very rarely eat. And you're like, you're in Witherspoons where there's a fucking app and you could get halloumi fries like that. And you're just sitting there going, I didn't have time, but I had 19 bottles of Tuborg or some shit.
It's always Tuborg and a jug of Long Island iced tea and some Dark and Stormy. And I ate 4 pizzas. Like because you can summon. It's like magic. Yeah, it's like magic. They'll just bring. I love that, because I used to love this with like I transitioned, like have you ever worked in hospitality? You ever done like bar or hotels?
No, I was always the first job was in a bingo hall calling numbers, and then I worked just behind a till in a shop, and then for a wee bit call center, and for another wee while I stewarded at like festivals, like just event stewarding, but that was more like a second thing, so that was just more so I could see Pearl Jam and Metallica for free. Which I did.
Yeah, very good. Very good. Yeah, fair. Well, if you like, hospitality is insanely boozy. Like it's insanely, and everyone works off hours, so you work shifts, so it's insanely boozy. So like, your day off would be a Wednesday and a Thursday, and you'd just be fucked on a Wednesday and a Thursday because it was your weekend. And I used to work nights for a spell. So like when they introduced 24-hour drinking, me and my mate, for a laugh, would finish a night shift at 7:30 a.m. and go straight to the pub and order beers. And we were like 20 years old, and people just be like, what's going on? But they couldn't stop you. Yeah. What they didn't know was like, that was our after work, because we'd been up all night. We'd slept all day and been up all night and whatever. Yeah. I found when I transitioned into office jobs, like they didn't do that. And that was a good thing. It's a healthy thing. Like you don't just constantly get drunk. And I went into 9-to-5s, and for a spell, for about 5 or 6 years, I went to 9-to-5s, and that's a healthier way of doing things, because you don't have that. But what I found was like office Christmas parties and that kind of thing. So you just did that inhale of like, here we fucking go. Yeah. Like you would kick out of the office at 12:30. Sometimes in a Christmas office party, like they give you a glass of bubbly at 12:30, and then they've booked a restaurant, and then you sit down at 1. And there's wine, and essentially you're drinking from 1. And like, I was in my 20s when I was doing that, into my 30s. So like, we were part of the hardcore. So you'd go in at 1, you would tip out of the restaurant or venue at 7, and no one would look at their watch, and they'd all think it's 1 a.m. because you're all fucking arsehole. So you walk out to the street, just like, and then like the younger ones and I worked in English language teaching, so the alcoholics would spill out and just keep going, and we'd be up till like, you'd be still drinking at 1, and that would be a 12-hour bender, and then you would finish at like 4, and you'd have this massive bender, and then no one did that again for a year. Yeah. It was just this insane, because people didn't do that. Like, so like coming from hospitality where people just drink all the time, and it's like they'd have this massive blowout, and like you would see like Julie from accounts grinding on the meek sort of like, you know, sciences teacher who's married, and, you know, it'll get messy as shit. And
Stephen
just,
from HR is getting rimmed or some shit. You're like,
getting rimmed. Yes, exactly. Yeah, in a Weatherspoons whilst you're just drinking your Tuborgs.
Just on the app. Yeah, like Tinder or something.
Okay, I'm getting a banana split. What is this?
It's always like you get the most, if you do eat when you're day drinking, which a lot of people don't seem to do, it is always like where you get, it's never something like, let's just get a burger or fish and chips. It's like, you know what, I want a fucking I want a tiramisu. Give me it.
Yes,
get two.
yes.
Get two. Something stupid. Can I get?
Would they put a tiramisu on a steak if I asked them to? I find my problem is that I'm not a big fan of food. But I do cook and I do love food. I'm sort of not big.
Richard Jackson doesn't like food. Thinks it's overrated.
Well, classic Richard Jackson. I kind of find, on one level, I find food a bit gross, and I do have OCD. That's like a thing. I do have OCD, and I think, well, I've been told it's part of that. But I find food kind of gross. But I also love food. Like, I really love food. Like, I cook and stuff. So it's very contradictory.
Okay.
I kind of find like when I'll be really hungry, and then someone will give me a drink, and then I'll drink for a bit, and then someone says, "Do you want to eat?" And I was just like, "Oh, that sounds gross. I don't want to eat." When my body is like, "You should definitely eat. Please eat," but my brain kind of is like, "No, food's gross," and I'll just keep drinking, and that kind of fills the gap. Yeah. And I can like, look, you know, the fucking English in me ain't that. It's my mum's side. Like, I can hold my drink, so I'll just keep going, but not eat, and I'm getting all my calories from the beer. Yeah. And then the next day, I'll feel like God has shit in my brain.
Yeah.
Because I'll just be like, I don't want to eat. Food's gross. Yeah. But then if someone actually touches the pizza on my lips, I'll just be like, oh, I better eat 12 pizzas then.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh, pepperoni, good. You know.
You can't cheat the not eating thing. I don't know anybody who's like, I haven't eaten all day and I've been drinking all day and I'm perfectly fine. I'm like, you were crying in TK Maxx about 10 minutes ago. What the fuck? Dressed as a Nazi.
Maxx. Did you go drinking with Prince Harry? That's great.
Yes, actually, that was my next point.
It's the word, like, if you do, because that's the thing. Sooner or later, someone will give me, when I do that, someone will give me a chip. I'm just kind of like, oh God. And then I will eat 12 portions of cheesy chips. That's the thing. That never wins. Like, I've got this thing where I think food's gross, but when I actually taste it, I'm kind of like, oh, food's amazing. I'm going to eat 90 fucking portions of chips. And it's fine. Those people who don't, they're the ones that they just end up like puking all night and then they're sick for 10 days. And you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, you have to put something in there. Like, yeah,
there's like the real psychotic people who, you know, drink all day and then they come back to your house or a house. And then, you know, they always, I don't know if this is a thing your end, but there's a guy in Belfast who will sell you alcohol from his taxi at like 4 a.m. He's got it all in his
Amazing.
Bed. He's got like, it's
we have a sketchy mobile number you can call and a dude comes and...
Yeah, and it's always that classic thing, no matter where you go, that you have a house party and everybody's eyes are bigger than their stomachs. So they're like, let's get Smirnoff, let's get a bottle of JD, blah, blah, blah. And then no one has any mixer, so you're just sitting there going, you were already cunted about an hour ago, and now you're drinking vodka and crisp and dry. You fucking psycho.
But crisp and dry. The thing is, though, for some reason, there's some kind of like magic wizardry that means it's not vodka. It's like room temperature Pernod, or some like, it's never, because you end up drinking like Angostura bitters or something. Yeah. It's always the worst.
Yeah, because you're like sitting there going, you could probably buy drugs off this dodgy man as well, and just be like, why is it in a Daz box? And you'll be like, oh, that's just where we keep it. You're like,
a Daz box.
Is it just Daz? Aye, that is it.
We did my mate Marco. He's not around here anymore, but his sister-in-law lives up the road, and we ran out of booze, and she was I know Mark from hospitality, and his sister-in-law was hospitality, and we all do different stuff now, but we had that hospitality drinking attitude. Yeah. And we called the sketchy mobile number to get the booze. I think we ordered the right amount of booze, but it's just the way it was delivered. Like, the sketchy mobile number guy, like, he was like, yeah, meet me in the street. So we stood in the street and waited for him, and he come tearing at us like it was a fucking GTA bonus stage. We all jumped out the way, and he goes, Richard, it's Richard. And we were like, yeah, man. It's like £20. And I put the £20 in, and then like it's like when you feed an animal at the zoo, just took the money. And then the back window was open, unrelated to the first guy, and someone just kind of went, and like,
Blow his headphones off.
Just chucked it at us, and like Mark had to move out the way because it was like one of the things was a crate of beer, and he threw it at him like it was a rock, and before it even hit the ground, he was like, and just gunned his car and drove off. It was like, it's not drugs, but you're acting like it's drugs.
Yeah, like
it was really like, okay, fine, and cost obviously more.
Oh yeah, it's like four tins of Stella and a tin of something random, and they're like, yeah, that's £30. You're like, okay, but at that time in the morning, you're like, yeah, that's a bargain. You know what I mean? Will we get something to eat? No.
The irony of this is you know, hey ho, not sorry.
Well, on that note, I think I'll leave you, man. Thank you very much for coming on. I hope you enjoyed.
Get out of my podcast, man.
No,
dude, thank you. I'm very flattered that you had me on. That's really nice. Like, if
you're very welcome.
I can reach out to Duncan on your behalf if you're interested to speak to Duncan.
Absolutely, yeah. I know that again, sound like a psycho, but I know he's soon to be a dad. So
he is, yes, yeah. Very soon, August, he's going to be a dad.
Oh, okay. So, if you want to tell him to give me a message on some sort of social media, MSN Messenger or some shit, and yeah, for sure. But thank you very much again for coming on. I will put all the links to Valverde in the description for this. It'll be a few weeks before this goes out and block filming like some sort of arsehole. But yeah, thank you so much again. I didn't think you were going to do this, to be honest. But yeah, thank you very much. It was nice to finally speak to you in a slightly more virtual thing, even though it's beyond Twitter DMs. You know what I mean?
Dude, the pleasure's all mine. I'm very flattered you asked, so please.
Yeah, and again, anytime if you want to come back on, certainly. If you think of any more dildo-related tales.
He's making regrets already. No, but I would love to. Thank you.
Yeah, and I don't know what you've got plans for the weekend, but hopefully you've a lot of fun. Do eat something. Eat something.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, and again, a couple of weeks, if we want to do another episode, absolutely. Let's do it.
Dude, I'm not going anywhere. As I made clear, I have nothing better to do.
Cool. Well, again, Rich Jackson, thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming on.
My pleasure. Take care, man.
You too, man. Have a nice weekend. I'll see you soon.
Cheers. Bye.
All the best, man. Thank you. Take it easy.